It is Friday. That means bring it in with me, Gerard Hector, and Coach David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
Gerard, I'm fucking fantastic.
NBA action, some might say, is fantastic. I've heard that said a time or two.
especially when there's a little more flow to the game, a little more fluidity. That makes an old man happy.
We are seeing that. Before we get to on the floor action, there's just stuff we're going to talk about before we get into that. A story that has been sort of much bandied about, and people were looking forward to what was going to come out. The Robert Sarver expose was released by ESPN's Baxter Holmes. And, Coach, the one thing I'll say, because it was Baxter who did this, that is a reason why I am prompted to believe that all of it is true, right? Because there's almost nobody more plugged into NBA in terms of investigative research than Baxter and our good friend Henry Abbott, right? And let us not forget that Henry published a video earlier this year of Robert Sarver at the memorial-themed, the Luau-themed memorial roast of Dick Heckman, who was a former business partner of Suns owner Robert Sarver. And in that video, even though it was a roast, Sarver was making lewd sexual references and comments and innuendo. And while it may have been a joke to some people in attendance, there were people who were there who said it's kind of uncomfortable and these stories are not making me feel great, regardless of the fact that whether it's a roast or not. So when you think about that, the preoccupation with sex during his part of the roast, and when you read the Baxter Holmes piece and the constant references to things of a sexual nature, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to start putting things together and be like, this is not a great dude. And I will say this before I open the floor to you, Coach. The NBA is a small community. Let's not pretend like nobody in power in the NBA's home offices that this is some big revelation. Like, oh my God, I never knew this was true. People talk in the NBA. You and I both know that. These stories about him, people who are in the know, nobody is surprised.
I mean, you're totally right. I told you before air, about a month ago, I was talking to a prominent agent about the Ayton situation. This is before he had ultimately not got his extension signed, agreed to. And we talked about James Jones, their general manager. And I mentioned something about Sarver just being, the terrible owner that he is. And yet they had a good season last year. And this agent said, it's way worse than that. And basically told me everything that was it, much of what was in this report, not everything, but much of it. And so, yeah, if I knew about it a month ago, and I didn't even try, like I wasn't even remotely interested in anything about that guy. I think there's a bigger issue. And thankfully with people like Baxter and of course, Henry being, I think, the real ringleader behind the search and the effort to make us all much prouder of the league than we currently can be. I did a podcast yesterday, the old show I used to do, Nerder She Wrote, and one of the guys on it now, Seth Partnow, is great, very bright guy, former NBA, executive. He gave a great little speech about how terrible it is for everyone else working on those teams when you have an owner like that. And I followed him up by saying, yeah, this is the dream job for every player. Scotty Barnes mentioned this on a video recently I saw where he was on the pregame on the court and saying, like, I dreamed of this moment. Well, all of them did to some degree. Every player did. But so is every coach. Now, the old guys can be a little bit jaded, but they once had a dream. And certainly every executive and scout, but also people working in the periphery, around the periphery. There's only 30 of those teams in the world. And to have to deal with a guy like that is such an unfair ask when the alternative would be just to leave the NBA job you've dreamed of. And so that's the other collateral damage. The direct damage that he's providing is obvious, and we probably can never really overstate that damage. But there's a secondary one. In other words, I don't know if you saw Rex Chapman, and I don't have any issue with what Rex wrote, because it was his truth. The only issue I would have with any white person saying, well, that guy was never racist in my presence, is to recognize, well, you didn't live with the man. You had moments, and it's fine to share your view of him. We want transparency. I do anyway, but don't act as if you have some kind of indication based on your time with them that these things may not be true. Come on now. And I don't think Rex meant it as such. He's been a champion for all the right things since the pandemic. But that's why I'm so proud of Henry. And people have asked me, I'm sure they asked you, Gerard, probably more than me, because your friends are smarter than mine as it comes to this stuff. What is Henry doing? Why is he doing this? And this is the answer. It's because Max Thorpe wants to work in the NBA one day, and I'll be damned if he's got to work for a guy like this just so he can make his dream come true.
Yeah.
And every player and every woman working in these places has the same story, if not worse. So we want an NBA we can be proud of. We want to know the truth about everything. And thank goodness for people like Baxter and their editors and Henry, of course, who are helping us ultimately maybe figure some stuff out. Do you think he's going to have to resign ultimately after the investigations?
I mean, look, there's a couple of things you touched on there. So to answer the question about resigning or if Adam forces him to sell the team, much like he did Sterling, okay. So in the sort of like, sure, I guess that's great, right? You take away the billionaire's toy, and we know the billionaires like to have their NBA teams because that's how they feel cool and important and whatever. But Donald Sterling bought the Clippers for $12 million, sold it for over $2 million, made a hell of a profit.
Yeah.
Robert Sarver bought the team for $430 million, going to sell it for maybe 1.7. I mean, you're going to make 3x profit in under 20 years. So what punishment is there for it, right? Like that doesn't solve anything. So, I mean, great. He's out of the NBA, but he walks away with all that cash. The couple things you touched on there with Rex Chapman. I don't disagree with you in that. My issue with when people like Rex Chapman come out to Cape is problematic for me. You, Rex Chapman, as a white man, when you say things like that, are invalidating the experiences of the minority people who work for the Suns who've experienced those things, right? Just because you never experienced anything while he was around, what does that have to do with what these people are saying, right? It'd be akin to any man trying to tell a woman, oh, no, that's not how so-and-so was like with me. I never saw him get physical with a woman. It's like, what does that have to do with shit? Like, what do
you got to qualify that statement. And I didn't see him qualify it.
No qualification. So, I'm not here on that. I just think that this is a problem for so many people. And to your point about your son, Max, wanting to work in the NBA, in that Baxter Holmes piece, there was the young man who got his pants pulled down in a meeting by Robert Sarver, allegedly. And the young man saying, I felt as though I couldn't speak out about it. Why? To your point, coach, there's only 30, any job on an NBA team, 30 of them exist in the world. That is the dream job for literally every single person who has it. If I say boo, not only am I never working for that team again, I'm probably not working for any other NBA team again.
Right.
So they hold the scarcity of the job over your head to allow them to behave the way they want to behave. And it's problematic. And what Henry does and what Baxter did with this piece is letting us know, look, man, we need to be aware of who the people are that are purchasing teams and coming into this league because it's dangerous. And, look, you guys know if you've been following Troop for a long time, I talk about it, Henry talks about it, Coach talks about it. All you got to do is a cursory look into these people's lives, not even deep research like Henry's doing, top line stuff. And that stuff is heinous and will make you feel like, what the hell? So imagine going deep down the rabbit hole, what you're going to find.
Right. Well, there's that term that Henry's used a few times, sport washing. I don't know that Sarver bought this team to sport wash anything, but we know that tends to happen and has been happening, to your point earlier. This is not new for anyone that's involved. And I have lots of friends who've either played for the Suns or worked for the Suns, and they just talk about what a terrible guy Sarver is. And I always just think they're talking about as an owner. They're talking about as a person, I now realize. And but they've got to kind of keep their mouth shut, which is the point. They can get away with it because they're in positions of power with jobs that you just can't find anywhere else. And so, yeah, we need to continue that march so that, in 2040, we just have a much better NBA starting at the top. A much better NBA. I know your feeling about billionaires. It'd be great if our government actually taxed them at more than 3% and they can still be billionaires. That's fine. And we had those people who were willing to pay more than 3% of their taxes. And I don't know what we're going to end up getting to. But I know this is not acceptable. And I want to say one other thing. Yes, Sarver is going to make a ton of money if he does have to sell to make billions on his investment. But it's still a win.
Yeah.
Like as a coach, I just say, let's not equivocate on the win. Let's get this motherfucker to sell and hopefully really vet, which I don't at all trust that we will. We, meaning the NBA, not me. What consortium or individual is going to buy this team? And let's make sure they're nothing like Robert Sarver. We can do it one team at a time, whoever deserves to be ousted and have to sell, and let's get a better group in. It seems like the guys running the Hawks right now are doing a fine job. Some of these new owners have come in and done a fine job. Let's try to get that. That's how we can somehow heal the problem that we have now.
Yep, agreed. Coach, let us move to on the floor. So some superstars in the league, most notably Damian Lillard and James Harden, have struggled to start the season. And you wrote a nice piece this week, making a nice little connection with Tom Hanks. We'll talk about Damian Lillard, Tom Hanks, and slumps.
Yeah. Henry did Henry and I both listened to Tom Hanks' podcast on SmartLess. And he's what came up with this idea and then just asked me to opine with on the court stuff. And yeah, Damian, so he missed 50 of his first 65. And then I think he went maybe 3 of 10 or 11 last game. So it's even worse now. And yeah, I just, my thing is, it's when you're, in the article I write about Mr. Miyagi, who really is like the fictitious character of Mr. Miyagi, is a mentor to me in a sense. Like I definitely have coached like the Karate Kid guy for sure. And not as adorable maybe, but I've definitely tried. I'm probably a little rougher. And either you're committing, which is great, or you don't commit, fine. But in the middle, you get squished like a grape in the middle of a road, right? And I think that Damian's saying all the right things about now I'm going to stay in Portland, which is absolutely okay. I've written this and I've said this publicly. Like, you're allowed to change your mind. I always argue in defense of players who they're not hypocritical at all. My wife and I thought we'd live in Florida forever. Not anymore. We don't feel that way for different reasons. And that doesn't make us hypocritical. We changed our minds. We're allowed. He's allowed to. So, but it isn't so easy to say, you know what, I'm buying Chauncey. I love Portland. I want to finish my career here. And there's part of him saying, but don't you want to win a championship or even get close to it? Mm-hmm. And they're wrestling. And so I argue in this piece that might be a reason why he can't isn't at all shooting well. Mm-hmm. It also could be the ball is different, although plenty of guys are shooting it great with this ball. And he's had this ball for a long time now. I will argue, I didn't mention this in the piece, Gerard, but because he played for Team USA this summer, he did not use the Wilson ball. So in a lot of I don't think he did in practice every day. My guess is they used the FIBA ball. All these other guys were shooting. Yesterday I have the new Wilson balls and I had the old NBA balls, the Spalding ones. And there's a difference. There's not a huge difference, but there's definitely a difference. And I've never had a player ever that didn't love the old NBA ball. My son included, once you shoot with that, nothing touches it, even though it's a little slick when you first get it. It is.
Yeah.
But it grooves to your hand in such a great way. And again, maybe it's affecting Damian because his hand size might be a little different than some other guys are shooting it great. There's other things that are going on that's more physical. He can't go to the rim and score as easily and get a foul called. His free throw numbers are down. So there is a psychology behind seeing balls go in more, giving you a little bit more of a feel for making threes. And so maybe that's the reason why too, or maybe it's all of it. But not everyone has this excuse. James Harden is Chris Paul, who's maybe coming out of his shell a little bit now. It's been a grind for a bunch of guys to start this year. And then I think the final point, which is something we've been talking about for a long time, man, this is season 3 in 12 and a half months.
Yes.
And I think it's adding up. I think they'll figure it out. I do. But yeah, it's just, you've gone through a lot. Yeah. And none of us are evaluated. I made a mistake in one of our recent articles. I don't remember if I looked up a number. I feel like, Maya when we added up the total records for everyone, I had 72 wins for a couple of teams. That's totally on me. But no one's really keeping track the way we keep track of Damian Lillard's threes.
Right, right.
We're all a little mentally fatigued and stress fatigued, whatever. And
Yep.
so I think that's a part of it. I hope that balances out and we end up seeing Damian at his best again.
Yeah, I think like with most things, Coach, as human beings, our brains always want to go to an either or something simplistic, right? That's just how we like to operate. And it's never one thing when you're talking about something like this, right? It's multiple things. You and I have said it, and I've been standing on this mountaintop, but I'm saying it again. 3 seasons in 12 calendar months. That is a lot of basketball. That matters. The Wilson ball thing. One of the things that matters is the NBA balls. It's not like they go, and I'm sure fans know this, but just a little behind the curtain. They don't go to Dick's Sporting Goods and bust out 10 brand new Spalding balls before games. Those balls have been in usage and are worn in, right? So they've got feel to them, right? The Wilson balls just came into the NBA locker rooms in April last season, right? So it's going to take them a while before they get fully into the usage rotation like the Spalding balls were. How much does that matter? I don't know. But for players who are creatures of habit, I bet some of them are like, ooh, this feels funny the first time I touch it, right? It'll take them some time to get used to that. And I think, again, with Damian, he's a human being. Not only was it the whole, am I going to leave Portland back and forth, right? Major things, right? My career and my legacy as an NBA player. Got married, had babies in the offseason. I never had babies, but I've been married. I know that big things like that change your life, right? It makes you feel a certain kind of way. He's only human, so I'm sure all of those things coupled together may have something to do with him not starting out the season great, in addition to getting adjusted to the new foul calls, right? Like it's just the nature of life.
I'm really glad you said that. A student of mine for a long time, a former NBA player that's now a great player in Europe. He sent me pictures of his newborn baby, which is his second son. His first son is like 2 now. And he sent me a video introducing me to the baby was 4 hours old. And I don't speak the language that my player was speaking to his baby, but I know the name David is the same in their language too. And so he was introducing Uncle David basically to this baby. And in that moment in time, I was telling my wife this later because I sent it to her, like nothing else existed for me. It's not even my child. I didn't even used to be this way until I had kids of my own. It is, of course, incredibly life-changing, and it does put things in perspective. Did he have twins, by the way?
He did.
Okay, so there you go. So I don't know how I missed this. I should have led with this. Nothing else, there's nothing you can keep track of. Now, he could afford 8 nannies if he wanted to, whatever. We chose to have no nannies because we figured we're going to figure it all out ourselves. Big mistake. Those first few months are really fucking hard. But yeah, all of it adds up to it. And then my buddy Seth made another good point too, Gerard, which is we're comparing shooting numbers, not just in Damian's case, but generally speaking in the league, to last year where there were almost no fans in the arena most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that these guys aren't used to fans. Of course they are, but it is a difference. So again, to your point, it's all added together in a great big stew of bricks,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Great big stew of missed shots. I think it's going to looking like most other years, given the fact that the games is a little more physical again now. And I thought there was a place for that. I'm glad that it is. I don't want it to get extreme. I don't want it back. I don't want fights.
Right.
I don't want fists thrown. I don't want any of that.
We don't know those rock games of 89, 76. Don't need those again.
No, well, if it comes because guys are just playing amazing defense, I can live with that. If it comes because guys are getting battered and bruised, I don't enjoy that. That's professional wrestling to me. And I don't watch professional wrestling since I was 12. I haven't watched it. So I think we'll see it coming around some.
Yeah.
But I bet it's a topic we revisit again because it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to be a process.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned Seth Partnow now at The Athletic. He wrote a story about why offenses are down. And, look, most teams are about 8 games into their season, 8, 9 games. My thing is, and I know you a believer in this, Coach, while we're looking at data 8 or 9 games in, we're still at a small sample size. The NBA is an 82 game regular season. Let's see where everybody is at the quarter way mark, right? So 20 games in to the season. Let's see what these numbers look like. And if people are still trending, players are still trending down, and then depending on who you root for or what your interests are, these are things that maybe, okay, the alarm bells can start ringing a bit where it's like, all right, we've had 20 games now and you're still shooting 18%. Something's up, right? Like what's going on? Let's try to figure some stuff out and see what's going on here. But I think, it's a talking point, right? Because we're so used to seeing like, oh, these great things. This person comes out scorching, and it's like, oh my God, what's happening? Is the end of everything? Probably not. It's just, let's wait, pause. Let's get to 20 games, see where we are at 20 games.
20 games. I think that's what the math people say.
Of course, it's a quarter of the way through the season.
Yeah, you start getting a pretty good. Obviously, nothing's ever perfect. Miami's had 2 different teams that I could think of that started bad and ended up very good, but we're not good after 20 games. So it happens. But yeah, I think that if the referees continue to allow the game to be played the way it's being played, scoring's gonna be down a little bit. I also think that just defenses have evolved. Mm-hmm. And so until there's a new offensive wrinkle attached to that, which might be more second box jumpers, hunting that, setting pin downs for that more, for more than just Kevin Durant, a few other guys. You might see defense kind of winning, but it's a tug of war. And right now defense is, kind of got that flag in the middle more to their side. This is a league loaded with super talented guys.
For sure.
It'll come around the other way too.
they'll figure it out. I think the other thing too is, coach, is that like for fans, our eyes for the last, 8 seasons have been so trained into our brains. No, offense, right? We've seen ridiculous scores. And now that it's not, it's like we're having a malfunction. Like, what's happening? Why are scores down? Everybody's freaking out. And it's like, it's okay, settle. We'll eventually get ourselves to a good point. Speaking of people who are not settled, Boston Celtics, some excitement happening up in Beantown. So Marcus Smart, everybody knows about the comments by now, after a bad loss to Chicago on Monday night, basically said that Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown need to stop hogging the ball, and our offense is too predictable late in games. And, they had a come to Jesus moment on their trip to Orlando, a team meeting, players only. Not even 10 games into the season, players only meetings, a bit dramatic for things going on in Boston. But here's something that I find interesting, coach. So the Celtics, and you got 2 wing talents in Brown and Tatum who are under the age of 25. Both have been all-stars, et cetera, right? Jaylen Brown was the number 3 pick in the 17 draft, and Tatum was number 3 in 18 or 16, 17, whatever. Yeah, a year apart, basically.
Yeah.
Tatum's been the guy, right, who was the much more heralded player, complete offensive game, all that jazz, right? And we saw that much earlier on in his career, right? I think the scales have tilted a bit. And Jaylen Brown's looking quite good himself on offense, and is certainly, to start this season, again, small sample size, playing way better offensively than Jason Tatum is. And you know what it's like with young guys and egos and whatever. Is there any cause for concern in Boston with a little bit of a wrestling between Jaylen and Jason as to who belongs, whose team is it?
When you have a team meeting, it's always smart to do it, a players only meeting, before you play a team like the Orlando Magic. That's number 1.
Because a win's coming.
But they also beat Miami in Miami.
They blew Miami out.
Exactly. Kyle Lowry got hurt, but still. That's a good win. They have a rookie coach. It takes a while. He's a great guy, but it takes a while to figure that stuff out. And I happen, Jason Tatum improved more last year, or maybe it was 2 seasons ago, the bubble year, than I expected that quickly. Jaylen Brown to me is a very, very talented player. And he's such a charismatic leader, almost like from a political point of view, I shouldn't say political, because he tells it like it is. Politicians tend not to. It's hard to unseat that. Like, Tatum looks like a jerk if you go after that authentic man. So, and Marcus Smart, he's a shit stirrer. Like, Scott Skiles is that way, Pat Bev is that way. Like, this is what you get. If you want Skiles to be what he was, if you remember, and you want Pat Bev to do what he does, and then you want Marcus Smart to guard the guys he has to guard, you gotta just accept the fact that, like, if you have a rattlesnake as a pet, some other things are going to die in the area. You made the choice. Right. This is who Marcus Smart is. And I love it. I love it about him. And like in the short term, it's worked. Because when he does speak, I think you have to listen. He gives everything he have on the court. He's a warrior and a smart guy on the court, as is Jaylen Brown. Very bright guy. Like when I think of Jaylen Brown, the first thought I think of is intelligence. It's not even basketball. And 6'7" and athletic. He's a very erudite, intelligent man. And guys like that tend to figure stuff out. And I think the culture there is good. And so I feel this way. We're going to get to the Lakers too. Like, to me, if you've got a great culture, it's silly to assume it's only going to be smooth sailing, because we live in a world where lots of other external factors get involved all the time. The point of the great culture is that it takes all of that negative energy and ultimately turns it into something positive. It's what the Spurs did when Ray Allen was able to tie the game and they lost game 7, and then they came back and waxed the world. That's what good culture can do. Give me your lightning bolts. I'm going to turn the energy. It just takes some time.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not so down on the Lakers. And again, we'll get to that. Or Boston now. The fact that it happened this early was kind of weird, but they were losing. They were not playing great. And so, I mean, to beat Orlando on the road isn't something you get excited about. Beat Miami like a drum. That is. They're a top 5 team. So I gave Boston a 0.5% chance to win a championship, because I thought, to your point earlier on, with Brown and Tatum being the wings, you've got Robert Williams as a major X factor, as a legit center who's growing. And I think they've got a good culture and good management. Let's see how the rookie coach does as Ime Udoka as the season goes on. But 0.5% is not nothing. It's also not 10% or 5% or 20%. They're good.
Yeah.
We got to see more to do, and it's a great East.
I think the next step and next level for Brown and Tatum when it comes to leadership is, okay, we know what you can do, and how can you make your teammates better around you, right? That is, and you know, people say leaders are born, not made, whatever. I don't know that I buy that, right? Like,
I don't buy it at all.
You can develop into a leader, right? And you learn that through lessons, right? And this is a lesson. This is one of the many lessons that will happen. How you figure out, okay, how do we keep the locker room on a good page? And it's not just about me scoring. How can we get the best shot for ourselves in crunch time? And I think part of it's Ime growing as a coach. He's a rookie. I think there's a reason why he was excited taking that job, right? You don't have 2 all NBA level wings. They don't grow on trees. So this is like, oh yes, like I can do something here. Yeah. And they can. It's going to just take a little bit of time. That's all.
I think so. And I will tell you without doubt that I've never encountered anyone that was born to be a leader. I mean, I don't know the whole world. There's been some pretty spectacular leaders. when you know, how did MLK become what he was? Maybe it was culture around him. Maybe it was genes. I just have never dealt with that personally. I know damn sure I'm a leader in my world, my little community. I'm also happy to be a follower. I'm an amazing assistant coach. I pride myself to be the best assistant coach of all time. If I'm on your bench, I'm going to do the best freaking job I can to make you look great and smart. And, but I know how to lead too. And I guarantee you, as good as my parents were, man, they had 4 kids. They didn't know which end was up. 3 of them were stupid ass boys. So I wasn't born with squad. I had to figure shit out if I wanted to stay married, especially. And so I think what you said is great. Like the guys in Boston, that's a super dynamic duo. Like that's why I gave them 0.5%. There was like 7 teams that had a chance to win in my mind. That you're a long way away towards it when you got those 2 guys, 2 number 3 picks who are legit all-stars. All right, guys, step up.
Yeah.
When you say make guys better, it isn't just playmaking. That's short-sighted. It's everything making. What are you doing on defense for us to be a top 5 defensive team? How are you sharing the ball to Marcus Smart's point? Because he talked about it. What kind of leadership are you doing for our young guys? Might there be a G League candidate, like the way Reeves is playing the Lakers? That's going to carry some weight later on. Like you guys need to foster all of that, as well as empower your head coach. And challenge him the way I think I mentioned on Monday, Draymond Green. Maybe I told Henry on the phone. Draymond said to Steve Kerr, though, they had a big win. Yeah. And Steve Kerr admitted after the game, do you see this?
Bad body language. Yep.
Yeah. And Draymond called him out and Kerr agreed. I fucking love that. Talk about culture.
I mean, and that's Draymond in a nutshell, right? Like
That's the best.
He is someone who has no problem letting you know, here's
Right.
what I'm seeing out here. So
Right. But
kudos.
but Draymond didn't talk about it. Kerr did.
No, it's
I
great.
thought it's also great for Kerr to acknowledge that. It's got to mean a lot to Draymond.
And that's the culture out there in Golden State. And we'll get to them, I'm sure, later as well. I want to talk about the Hawks really quick, Coach. They made their run to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. You wrote that great article about how they can win an NBA championship sometime very soon. And we're all high on them. We love their young talent. They're struggling a little bit to start the season. And Trae Young had some comments after a loss last night against Utah. Their second game, back-to-back, second night of a back-to-back, played in Brooklyn on Wednesday night. Trae said, we want to treat every game like a playoff game. I think we've gotten away from that, and we're kind of just playing for flow, and everyone wants to feel good. But if we're not winning, it doesn't matter. We need to get back to how we were playing in the playoffs. I think guys are learning that. We're no longer the hunters. It's regular season. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot more boring than the playoffs. You got to find the motivation to play like the playoffs. And I'm just curious, like, I'm not worried about the Hawks, but there is something different, as you know, Coach, when you are the surprise that nobody saw coming and you're like, oh, you're legit. And then when you do it and everyone says, wow, this team is talented and loaded. And now the situation is, oh no, when Atlanta comes to town, be prepared. We're ready to play these guys. And you as a young team being able to respond to that type of pressure now. So now we've got to play well in the regular season because we can't sneak up on anybody now because they've seen us. And then how do I ratchet it up again come time for the playoffs?
I think that it's super important for a team's identity to always have force be part of it in this league. And it's really hard to do. Do you follow college football at all?
A little bit, yeah.
So I really don't, but I can't not see some things.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Florida. Football's on all the time. You would think Nick Saban, who's the head coach of Alabama,
mm-hmm.
probably the greatest. I would not care for the man, generally speaking. We have mutual friends, and this is years ago, they've not spoken all that great of him off the field. On the field, they thought he was great. There's no question he's been the best coach probably in college football history. And his program is competing for national championships every year and signing top three. Mm-hmm. I can't watch an NFL game, which I never used to do until this year a little bit. Alabama players everywhere. So they're probably highly rated, and he's delivering. You cannot watch him in a press conference, which is really when I am exposed to him. I don't watch their team play. And have him not make you think the Alabama team is lucky to be competitive. And it's exactly how they go about doing it. Michael Jordan showed us the way, Gerard. Jordan always felt like I had to prove you wrong. You doubt me? He was Don Quixote. He created these monsters and then slayed them over and over and over again. Alabama does the same thing. No matter who they're playing, you would think they'd be thrilled to eke out a 1-point game, but they're trying to beat you by 55. And that is hard to do. Human nature is just the opposite. We teach this individually, Gerard, in practices, or if I'm preparing guys in the NBA for a game. When your opponent makes a tough shot on you, that's when you want to go after him, or a tough shot on anyone, not just you, because they tend to lighten up. I have a teaching point I call make 2 plays. You made a play, make another play. Because human nature is make 1 play and say, woo, I made a play. Right? And just relax. No, this is the nature of our species. And so Atlanta has had this great success, and people like me were writing these very flowery articles. But meanwhile, they are being hunted. You've got to flip that around and still be the hunter and understand they're coming after me, but I'm coming after you too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think Nate McMillan has that. I think Nate is he's got some nasty to him in the best mm-hmm. way. Like he mm-hmm. wants to crush you. No doubt. And he's been around. He's been on the block as a player and a coach. But those young guys are like, hey, this is fun. Cam Reddish having a good old time. He was playing well yesterday. He was playing well before that. They don't have that veteran leader. Mm-hmm. That Trae's got to be that. And so I think Trae's comments here are fine. But now you got to stand up to it. And you need to lead by example on defense, which is where I think their identity mm-hmm. has to be built. That force needs to come from defense, in my opinion, not mm-hmm. offense.
And take a page out of DeAndre Hunter's playbook, right? Like, he's their best wing defender. I mean, even though Durant lit him up for 30-something, right? Like, he was competing his tail off every time. Not, as your point, dying on the screen and being like, oh, forget. No, fought through and was still contest, right? Like, and I think that type of mentality is what the Hawks need. So you, Coach Thorpe, wrote a wonderful book called Basketball is Jazz. And, it's the idea of the randomness, right? And the sort of synchronicity of a bunch of musicians playing together is what creates this beautiful sound, right? And one of the best teams that sort of exemplify that are the Golden State Warriors, right? They're Cuisinart offense. It's just like ping, 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 ping. And it's like, it looks crazy. No, but it works, right? Like it ultimately gets them what they want. What are you seeing from the Warriors that is showing you, that is proving your point that basketball is in fact jazz?
Well, I first want you to read in your professional voice actor talent the quote from this article that Judy just posted from
yes,
the head coach of OKC.
And did you say his last name Daigneault?
I really don't know because I never watched them play.
Who cares? All right. This is Oklahoma City Thunder coach Mark Daigneault. They're a really good team, and it starts with the head of the snake, with Curry. He's just such a threat. Him and Green together is pretty impressive. These guys are kind of like jazz musicians out there. They just kind of play off each other in a pretty synergistic way. And that's where the threat starts with them.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Green needs to have this on a poster above his bed. There's so much me involved in the NBA because we are a league of superstars and they get paid to be a superstar. But the irony of this, and all of our heroes is the wrong word for you and me, but the guys we most look up to and respect as players, almost to a minute detail, understand it's about we. It's what are we doing collectively? Kevin Durant could score 50 points a game. I'm sure of it. Absolutely sure of it. Because there's no shot he can't get off, pretty much uncontested. He's that talented in the full court, in the half court, as a dribbler, as a shooter. But he wouldn't win championships and he'd be exhausted. And so you have to learn to play with the other guys. And so when he talks about, Green lives for Curry, but I have a feeling Curry takes care of Green as much as he possibly can off the court and on the court. This is where the game is. And so you think of a Jalen Green, you think of these young, talented players in the NBA, with some exception like a Jordan Clarkson, who is limited because he doesn't really get this. This is where the game is played. And what is missed by pretty much 100% of the fans is it's the same thing on defense. You just don't have a ball. It's the same thing. It's getting a feel for each other defensively. And when we speak about the Lakers, whenever that's coming up next in our script, they don't have that anymore defensively.
Yeah, correct.
But I am not betting against Frank Vogel and AD and LeBron that they won't figure this out to some degree anyway, defensively, because it's jazz on defense too. There's no such thing as having 5 great individual defenders and then also have the best defensive team overall, because they may not be very good off the ball. And you have to be good off the ball too. There has to be an awareness. There has to be a commitment to not caring if the guy that I'm guarding is scoring, because I'm taking away the threat that got by you because you're my teammate. I'm hoping someone comes along and then takes care of my guy. There has to be that trust. It works synergistically, as you said. There is a collaboration. They're all tied together by a string. And on the offense, it has a ball. On the defense, it doesn't have a ball, but it's the same goal, a same mission. And the Warriors have got it going on right now.
The key word you said there is trust. If you ever listen to a great jazz band, there's trust among every musician, right? That no one's going to step on the other person, right? While they're playing in that beautiful symphony and that synchronicity. And you mentioned Durant scoring 50 a game. I go back to the Milwaukee Bucks series last season. And this year during media week, one of the first questions he was asked by somebody, were like, Kevin, if your foot was half an inch short, like, you guys go to the conference finals, you probably win the whole NBA title, like blah, blah, blah. And Kevin stopped him mid-question and he's like, I appreciate you saying that about me. That's great. But we're not going to win a championship with me literally having to play every minute and do all that stuff. That is not going to work. But thank you for thinking I'm that great. But no, like that's not going to happen. And that's because he knows that, right? You cannot, there's no me in winning a championship. We have to do this together. So excellent point there by you about
one last thing. I need Devin's help. Is the new documentary Peter Jackson did on the Beatles, is it out now on Disney Plus? I'm just looking. I don't know what my date with my wife's going to be tonight because we're getting bad weather. So I want to know right now if that's our date tonight, is to watch the first episode. But Paul McCartney's been promoting this. He's been appearing on podcasts. He was on NPR Fresh Air the other day, and he's got a couple books coming out too, November 25th. Thank you, Devin. McCartney said his writing process with John Lennon And think of whatever you want about the Beatles. There was a pretty good writing team, Lennon and McCartney.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
And McCartney, I've heard him say this over the last year or so. One of their deals was, if either of us don't like it, it's out. Like, we're going to argue our point, and if we can't win that, it's out. We're just going to move on. And that's one reason why they were so prolific. They didn't argue to the nth degree, and they wouldn't have been as prolific, and they would have broken up a lot earlier. That's part of it. Like, you have to have that connection. And I think that Green and Curry kind of have shown the way. They're so different. I want to make one final point on Curry too. Steve Kerr talked about this in an article I read the other day, where Curry makes some kind of amazing shot, which whatever, does that all the time, and then just kind of giggles. And Kerr talked about, like, he plays with joy that I've never seen, and I so love that. But not everyone can do that. I had to tell my son, like, he said, Dad, I can't be the intense guy that you like so much in players. I said, Max, it's okay. Corey Brewer laughs nonstop in a game and smiles while he's trying to cut your heart out.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There's many ways to do it. Steph Curry is a beast of a competitor.
For sure.
But he's happy to giggle. And Green isn't so happy to giggle. And they just work together so perfectly. And they've really set a good standard for everyone to kind of copy.
Trust. And as the great Don Henley of the Eagles once said, or I'm sorry, it wasn't Henley, it was Jim Fry, the late Jim Fry. He said, every great band is on the verge of breakup. And it's true, right?
Who said that?
That was Glenn Fry, the one of the lead singers of the Eagles. Yeah.
Awesome.
Every great band is on the verge of breakup. And it's that line of that trust that you have to balance. I encourage, that's a good documentary if you haven't seen it, the Eagles on Showtime. Okay. The Lakers, coach, second time in a week, they lost to Oklahoma City Thunder. LeBron's out again for another week with an abdominal strain. Look, it's early, so I ain't hitting panic meter time, but it ain't looking great in LA. And particularly the formula that worked for them to win the bubble championship in 2020 was, we're going to play suffocating defense with LeBron and AD, and our role players are going to hit threes. Well, role players are hitting threes. They ain't playing no defense, though. And if that's not their identity, I'm not sure what exactly is the Lakers' identity.
The identity is LA and good weather. It's two superstars. Yeah, that doesn't equate to winning. We've been on this since day one. I thought they'd be really good this year. To be fair, Horton Tucker hasn't played. Malik Monk has played a little bit, but he was hurt for a while. Kendrick Nunn hasn't played. I don't believe he's played at all. Horton Tucker and Nunn are two athletic, aggressive guys that they need. I watched their fourth quarter last night, offense and defensively, and it was a mess. It was just chucking up shots, turnovers, no force on defense, but also no force on offense, settling for bad shots. Westbrook was awful, missing layups at the rim. Melo, you're allowed to miss threes. He made 2 threes late, Melo did, which was good, but was pretty bad at least a couple of spots that I saw in defense. And they just, you use the term playing with your food. It's a lack of will to lock in this possession as if it's the only possession that matters, and then repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. It's really what you have to do in the NBA until you've won the game, which might be with 5 minutes to play if you're up 25, but not when you're up 8 with 7 to play or whatever they were. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander hit
logo 3.
He hit a logo 3, yeah, with a minute to play. And then Westbrook had, I think we have it on film.
Oh yeah, play that clip, Judy, of the Westbrook one. I think it's B-ball breakdown. And
yeah,
Coach,
that's it.
We talked about trust. This play to me is like, whoa, trust. What's happening here? I literally watched that play 10 times, and I'm like, what is going on in this play?
I saw what was going on. It wasn't good for Russell Westbrook. Okay, so Russell at the top of the screen, if you're watching, I think he saw like a little bit of I think he thought maybe Shea was losing the ball. Let me watch it again. I think maybe he thought it was a turnover. No, I don't know what he was doing. Maybe they wanted to double Shea, and I get it, but not with him. We have a rule. You don't leave the guy you're guarding when he's the nearest guy to the basket, which in this case, they had lifted 5. We call it lifting 5 players or 4.5 players, his guy being the 5th guy. It's just a huge mistake. And then, of course, Shea hits the gigantic 3 before that from the logo. He's a hell of a player. OKC's only beat the Lakers twice this year. They've lost every other game. Now, I will tell you this. Watch Josh Giddey on offense. I don't know that he's anything on defense and may ever be. I know he's not now. He may never be. He is a super gifted offensive player. Super gifted. Can't really shoot yet. Really gifted passer, ball handler. Has some swagger to him. Like he's not impressed that he's going up against AD, whatever.
Yep.
And not that he could score so easily against him. He can't. But I think the Lakers, I mean, you said it right. Like Frank Vogel knows defense. And they finished third in the league defensively the year they won the championship. They were first last year. And then injuries kind of caught up with them against the Suns. They're 26th or whatever now. And they've got to solve it. Rondo was terrible last night in the fourth quarter. Westbrook was terrible last night in the fourth quarter. They need some young energy, some young spirit, and maybe some breaks too.
Yeah.
But I won't ever bet against LeBron. But when he's not there, AD is trying his best. He's a monster, but he ain't enough.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And again, the LeBron injury, I said at the top of the show, every season he's been in LA, he's missed part of it because of some kind of injury. Like that seems like a trend that's going to continue.
I agree.
And he is the glue that literally holds all that together. He's not there, they got no shot because he's the NBA's best problem solver. Like all the gaps they have, he can fill just about all of them, right? So it's going to be a problem for the Lakers. Moving on to one of the other co-favorites early in the season to win the season, the Brooklyn Nets, on a bit of a winning streak here. There's something interesting I've been noticing about them, Coach, and watching them closely. Harden is starting to get himself back into better shape. He's running stairs, doing a little bit more things. Like the explosiveness is looking a little bit better as it has the last couple of games. His timing on his playmaking has gotten a bit better. I'm also watching the Nets play, dare I say it, better defense. It's certainly ahead of their offense right now, surprisingly enough. And, you know, at this time last year, they were, again, bottom of the league in defense. They're top half now.
Better than that, I think.
Yeah. And small sample size to be sure, but they're doing things that they weren't doing last year. It's not, last year it was switch everything. It's not switch everything now. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It really depends on what's happening. And last year, one of the things that really stuck out to me was an Atlanta Hawks game. Last year, John Collins would slip screens on them every time and demolish them. They did not allow him to slip screens at all on Wednesday night. They literally stuck to him like white on rice. Their issue still is the rebounding component, right? Because they actually play 24 solid seconds of defense. But when they don't get the board to end the possession, now they got to play 14 more seconds on top of that. And that's like in the NFL, when you're covering a receiver, right? And the quarterback's got time to scramble. You can't cover that long, right? Eventually he's going to get by you and they're going to get the score. And that's their issue, is shoring up, close the possession and grabbing the board. But they're looking better.
Dunksandthrees.com rates the strength of your schedule, but also rates the strength of your opponents offensively and defensively. So the strength of their offensive schedule, meaning the defense that their offense is facing, is the 12th best offense, which is better than half. But they're rated 6th. So that's good. They're the 6th best defensive team according to Taylor Snars, which I trust the most. I've not watched them this last week, but we slammed them. And if we are slamming a team, well, just assume the coaches know too. Yeah, this is, you know, we might go after something really specific and small that, I mean, I might see some things the coach doesn't see, but there's no team that doesn't have at least one coach that doesn't see what I see, because they have big staffs. I'm not that freaking smart. They're all going to see it eventually because one guy will bring it up. But anyone could see what we were seeing initially that first 10 days of the season about their defense, and they've addressed it. And I think, you know, not that I need to always find ways to praise Kevin Durant. I mean, he's done enough, but this is what happens when Durant's your best player. You don't have to walk on eggshells around that. He wants to win. He wants to win. He really wants to win, I think.
Yeah.
And sure. And so I'm sure Steve Nash did not feel that he couldn't talk about their lack of defensive effort and execution which is what the Warriors are so good at, defensive execution, because the Warriors are a top 2, top 3 defense, but just Draymond Green being the only guy you would say is an elite defender. Wiggins is coming, maybe, but they do it in the they get everyone to do it. They all collaborate in Golden State, and when they all execute together, they can get their strategy done. Brooklyn's starting to do the same thing now. Brooklyn is playing with more force, valuing it. You got to first value it, which I think I wrote exactly. You got to value it first. They're valuing it now. And I agree with you. I saw Harden this week. I didn't watch the Nets much. I watched Harden, and he looked slimmer. Now it could be the jersey. It could be a tighter Spanx created by a woman here from Florida High School. I don't know. But whatever it is, he looks better. I think he looks better physically.
Yeah.
And that's a good sign for Brooklyn.
A very good sign. And I think this road trip will be interesting for them. They come, it's the longest of the season. They won't be back in Brooklyn until towards the end of the month. So it'll be just good to see how they do. You know, the road. Players always talk about the road. That's where we really see if it's all bullshit or if we've really taken lessons to heart. All right, let's bang through some of these topics quick before we close out with our top 5. Cade Cunningham, 1 for 21 from 3. Are you worried?
I mean, I had him as the 3rd best player in this draft. It's the best league in the world. He missed a lot of time. He has no experience. There's the weight of the world on his shoulders as the number 1 pick. And so when he made his first one, I'm sure he felt great. But 1 of 21 is as bad a start you can get. No, I think I don't love him to be an MVP player, but I think he could be a top 3 player on his. I think it'd be Jason Tatum at point guard. So a top 1 or 2 player on a good team. He needs Jaylen Brown now.
Yeah. Only place to go from there for Cade is up. The Ben Simmons situation, look, it's come out that he has been refusing the 76ers help for mental help, but he has been working with the NBPA's mental health professionals. I mean, that to me just, of course, that makes sense. We talk about trust quite a few times on this show. There is no trust between Ben and the organization. So why would he want to work with their doctors? So that's a non-starter to me. And by the way, Philly, 7-2 in his absence, playing pretty well.
Yeah, I don't understand. You know, most of these stories are leaked. Who's leaking this? Is this team Simmons or is this team Sixers? I got to think about it. I don't really know. Well, on Monday we'll visit it again. I'm sure we'll see what happens over the weekend. But it's a weird situation. They've done a good job without him, obviously.
Coach, the old guys in the NBA are playing well. I think Al Horford leads the league in blocks. What is happening?
That's the most impressive thing. Horford leads the league in blocks. Curry leads the league in Chris Paul leads in assists by a million. He's having 12 a game, and number 2 is number 9. Curry's at points. No, Paul George is at points. Curry's at 3-point field goals made, and Paul George leads in steals.
Yeah.
How about that? So
Wonderful.
He's not old. He's 31, but he ain't young. And the injury thing is the one thing we have to look at. My only point is I want to compare that to Cade Cunningham. We got Cade Cunningham, 1 of 21 from 3, also coming off an injury, not just being a rookie. And the best players, pretty much every stat, are very experienced guys. Michael Jordan said it, like right when he felt like he was losing his pure athleticism, his brain really kicked in, and the game became even easier for him. And that's what's happening. As long as they're healthy, they're the best players.
Coach, one of your favorite guys from Florida State, Devin Vassell. You're like, keep my eyes on this guy because he's something to watch.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point of Devin Vassell and Cole Anthony from Orlando. Devin's in his 3rd year. Anthony's in his 2nd year. Their teams are bad, but you can be a good player on a bad team. It doesn't mean you're only going to be a good player on a bad team. Look at Zach LaVine now with Chicago. You're allowed to grow. I love Devin Vassell, obviously. I think I thought it was a Reggie Miller type. Now that's more of a Chris Middleton in today's world, even though he's a guard. He really could defend people. He can shoot, and he's not shooting great yet. He's shooting good, but he's had 2 19-point games and a 21-point game. He's 21 years old. And Cole Anthony is averaging like a ton of rebounds a game as a point guard. He's out playing Jalen Suggs. So I want to make a point of that. And now I want to get your take on Scottie Pippen.
Look, Scottie is one of my favorite players of all time. I loved the partnership he had with Michael Jordan. Pippen has a book coming out, mainly because he didn't like the way he was portrayed in The Last Dance. And some people are saying he wanted money, he needs money, whatever. Look, I think for someone like Scottie, if you really know what his upbringing was like coming from rural Arkansas and like again, the likelihood of someone coming from that environment to make it in the NBA, highly, highly unlikely. right? So because he's gone through some real trauma and stuff in his life, real things. That relationship was always going to be fraught, right? Because when you are in the shadow of the sun, you're going to get burned. That's how it goes. And Jordan is the sun in so many ways. And The Last Dance is always going to be about him. And everyone's always going to say, you got nothing. You don't win those titles without Michael Jordan. But, to be fair to Scottie, Jordan doesn't win without him either, right? Like they were a dynamic duo. Yes, Jordan was the headliner, but you ain't winning without a good rhythm section, right? Like your band's got to sound good. You need rhythm. And so Pippen was so much of that backbone defensively, point forward, like ahead of his time. But I just, it was no doubt in my mind this book was going to go scorched earth and really come at people.
Yeah, it's probably a business decision. All right, let's skip Overtime Elite.
Yep.
We can talk JJJ if you want to, and then let's get to our top 5.
Well, look, we talked about Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. And Judy, if you can play that clip, I was so proud of him. I was coach again. I don't have kids, but this is like a proud dad moment because I'm watching that game and I'm like, all right, I know they're going to Jokic right now in the post because that's what you do. I was like, Jaren, don't bite on no fakes and you stay down. And by God, he did it.
Yeah. He guards him one-on-one. He doesn't take a fake. He talls up. He jumps straight up, doesn't foul. Jokic just missed. He just missed. And that's all you can do. Guys tend to miss that shot, even the best players in the world. I think for a second, Jokic tried to say he got fouled, and then he realized, I can't even complain about that. I don't think I did. All right.
And it was a good game by Jaren, too. 22 points. He was excellent.
We need it. We need it. We're both fans. All right, top 5. My number 5, I'm going with our friends from the North, the Toronto Raptors, who without Pascal Siakam are 6. I think they're 5-3, 6-3, whatever. They won 5 in a row. They're doing good.
Yep. All right, my number 5 is the Brooklyn Nets, just because of the things I've seen on defense. And I'm like, look, the offense hasn't even come around yet, which it will.
They were in number 6, so you're not stupid. They're a better team than Toronto, to be fair. I'm not dumb.
And that's what I did. I booted Toronto out because I'm like, Brooklyn's better.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Number 4 for me are the Sixers. They are playing really well. Now, all these teams have played terrible schedules, but you don't apologize for wins.
Right.
And so right now I got the 6 at number 4.
You play who's in front of you. Chicago Bulls are my number 4 team. Look, 7 wins. I mean, they're doing what they got to do, right? That roster's gotten better.
Yeah, I can't argue. Number 3 is the Heat, despite their poor performance against Boston. I think they're number 1 or 2 in net margin. Maybe Utah's number 1 now. But Kyle Lowry's injury, we have to see what happens now. He got hurt last night, ankle, I think. And that's a big deal.
Yeah. Number 3 for me is the Sixers. Like, they are who they are. And again, no Ben Simmons. Good job.
Yeah. I wonder if we're going to be off on here. So my number 2 are the Warriors. Played a terrible schedule. I think the worst schedule in the league. But they're whatever. They're finding ways to win. They're lucky as hell to have the easy schedule because they're going to get better as the year goes on, I think. Maybe significantly better.
Number 2 for me is the Heat. I just, despite what they did what happened against Boston, damn, that team can guard their asses off. Now, injury happens to them and we got problems, but they're excellent.
So you don't have the Warriors in your top 5?
I don't have the Warriors in my top 5 only because, I'm like,
Yeah. All right. So we both have Utah number 1.
Of course.
We could have done this 6 months ago and said the same thing. They're the best team. They've also played a very weak schedule. Joe Ingles is playing great. Conley's doing good. They're the best team in the league.
One quick thing I'll ask you about the Heat. We talk about how you have to have a level that you're playing at and not be below 0 so you can rise up come postseason time. Do you think the Heat play at too fervent a level during the regular season so they can't, and then come playoff time, there's nowhere to go. I can't go up higher than this.
I think it's an amazing point, and I don't know. I do think they're going to have to get some G League guys to play. They're going to have to play some younger guys more so these guys don't wear down. And this ankle injury to Kyle, which is not anyone's fault, it was just bad luck what happened. It's an issue. Jimmy Butler, Bam, they play with such force. Hero is young. Duncan Robinson is of age. He's in his peak at 28. But it's hard to sustain this. If anyone could do it, it's Spoelstra's team, led by Jimmy Butler and Bam and Kyle Lowry. What am I saying? Like all 3 of those guys are who you'd script. They could do it for 3 different teams. They're all on the same team. They are the opposite of what we talked about with like the Hawks. Mm-hmm. Those guys know. Bam, it's in his DNA. The other 2 have been around, and Kyle and Butler. It is a battle every night. I think Pat Riley loves this team because of it. He's like me. He's old school that way. And if any team could pull it off, it's them. But I do think they're going to hit a low unless they play some young guys, maybe lose some games, but keep those guys' energy and spirit up for the postseason run.
because I do think come postseason, nobody wants to face this team. I guarantee you that they're gonna look at that and be like, "Oh God, not them."
It is
Like,
not going to be. I agree. They're going to be a very tough out. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, folks, it's been another rousing edition of Bring It In on Friday. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe out there, and we will see you on Monday.